Welcome to CP Stated, the podcast where we explore the people, ideas, and innovations powering progress for individuals with disabilities across New York and beyond. In this episode, we're thrilled to welcome Constance Harrington, Director of Education and Accreditation for Tech First Shift, a national leader in helping organizations embrace enabling technology in person-centered, sustainable ways. We'll talk with Constance about what enabling technology really means, how it's being used today to promote independence for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the mission behind Shift's work. We'll also dive into how agencies can get started, including how to prepare staff, ensure solutions are person-centered, and even explore funding options that make these tools more accessible here in New York. Whether you're just beginning your tech journey or looking to level up your organization's approach, this conversation is packed with practical insight and inspiring stories about the power of technology to transform lives. Let's get into it.
I am Carly Smelson. I'm the Executive Vice President at CP State.
I am Constance Harrington, the Director of Education and Accreditation with Tech First Shift.
I'm Layla Hazlett. I'm the Director and Clinical Coordinator of Adult Services at Pathfinder Village. Well, welcome to the podcast, Constance. We're thrilled to have you here and to learn more about technology and how it can be utilized to transform the lives of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. To start, can you just tell us a little bit about what Tech First Shift is and what your role is within the organization?
Yeah, of course. First of all, well, thanks very much for having me. I'm pleased to be here. As far as what Tech First Shift is, I guess the best way to describe it is Shift is really a national leader in advancing this technology first approach in human services. And so for people who aren't familiar with this, we basically work with states, provider organizations, and then professionals to embed enabling technology into service delivery. Not as an afterthought, but really is an integral person-centered support. So our organization, our company offers both education and accreditation services to organizations to build internal capacity and to align their systems with technology first best practices. Shift's work is really grounded in the belief that technology, when we use it intentionally and ethically, can improve autonomy, quality of life, and outcomes for people with disabilities. As for myself, I serve as the Director of Education and Accreditation at Shift. And in that role, I lead the development of our education. I oversee professional certifications. I support organizations through the accreditation process. And then I also collaborate very closely with teams to build the systems and the mindsets that are necessary to sustain meaningful change. So I spent about, I hate to say it, a little over 20 years in this field, and it is my true passion to help transform services so that the people that we work with have an opportunity to live the lives that they want to live.
That's so great. And it sounds like it's such a needed thing right now with, how much technology is coming out and things are transforming. So it's such a great resource that people can utilize. I heard you use the term enabling technology in your answer. Can you provide us just a little bit about what the definition of enabling technology is and how it can be used?
Sure, I'd love to. Enabling technology really does refer to a broad range of tools, services, and devices that promote autonomy and to help people achieve what matters to them. So that could include things like smart home devices that allow someone to control lights and appliances with their voice. It could be medication dispensers that provide reminders and dispense the right dose. Could be wearables, remote support, task prompting apps that support independence at work or in daily routines. So probably most importantly, enabling technology isn't about having the latest gadget. It's about using the right tool to support a person's goals. So the goal always comes first. And so we know that when teams implement a technology first approach. They start with what the person wants to accomplish and then look for a technology that can serve as a bridge to get there. So it really is about improving, quality of life, increasing choice, decreasing reliance. It's not just convenience or cost. Now, I'm guessing that, most of the people listening have heard terms like assistive technology, adaptive equipment, durable medical equipment, and enabling technology. And so here's the thing. They're often used interchangeably, these terms, but they're not the same. We know that each reflects different intended uses and funding pathways, especially within Medicaid waivers. So, for example, what one state calls assistive technology, another might actually classify under adaptive equipment. And so at Shift, we focus on enabling technology, not because it's about the specific tool, but it's more about the purpose. So our lens is always, does this technology support self-determination? Does it promote ownership, reduce dependency, or move the person closer to their goals? And if so, it belongs in the conversation, and it definitely qualifies as enabling technology.
That's amazing, especially how person-centered everything is. And I love how you mentioned that everything goes back to the person and what their goal is and their needs are, before really focusing on the technology and what the newest gadget is out there. So what exactly is the mission of Tech First Shift, and how does it support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Well, I'm really proud of Shift. Shift is a mission-driven company, and that's what I'm really proud of. It's made up of people who are really passionate about supporting others to live the lives that they're choosing. So our work really is grounded in the belief that everyone deserves to have access to the tools and the supports that promote autonomy and self-determination and allow people to meaningfully participate in their communities. Our mission really is to help organizations embed enabling technology as a natural and expected part of services, not something that's reserved for just a few people or offered as a standalone program. We work to ensure that every person supported is considered as a candidate for technology. That's regardless of their age, their diagnosis, or their disability level of support needs. So Shift's technology first accreditation process then supports organizations in building the infrastructure, the policies, the procedures, the culture needed to sustain the approach over time. And through our standards, we guide teams in strengthening person-centered planning, supporting informed choice, adopting scalable and sustainable practices that are really rooted in equity and inclusion. So ultimately, our goal is to shift the narrative, moving away from technology as kind of an extra toward a future where it's really seamlessly woven into everyday supports, helping people live more independently, confidently, and authentically.
That makes so much sense. And it makes sense why the name is Tech First Shift, because you're really focusing on technology first, right? And shifting that narrative.
Exactly.
So I think for most people, the most exciting part is just hearing the person-centered stories of how this technology is being implemented and utilized, and kind of the end outcomes of what happens when these supports are implemented. So how have you seen technology be integrated as supports for individuals with disabilities to promote independence?
I like to say that I think we all have moments in our career that are standout moments. I've had the privilege of witnessing moments that were truly life-changing, maybe small in appearance to someone on the outside, but deeply meaningful because they really did, represent a person living the life that they want to live. I'll share a few stories with you if that's okay. I know I love stories. I have a hard time getting away from them. But a woman that I worked with who had CP relied on others for every meal. So because of her movements and her contractures, she was unable to eat independently. And so it was something she really wanted to do. We started working with her and found that kind of through the use of utensils with computer chips in them, she was able to guide her eating for the very first time. I'll never forget the look on her face after taking her very first bite. It was chocolate pudding, by the way. And it wasn't because she had the chocolate pudding. It was because she did it herself. That single moment just reflected so much hope. Really, with the right technology in place, she was able to do something that the team never really thought was possible. Another woman that I worked with, she had a physical disability and she was unable to get in and out of bed on her own. So, in talking with her, we learned that what she really wanted most was to be able to turn her lights on and off by herself. And so you might think that's kind of strange. Why is that? Well, it really boiled down to the fact that she wanted to be able to decide when to go to bed and when to wake up. And so what happened is when staff came by at night and they shut off her lights, well, it was like that was time for bed. And sometimes she wasn't ready, or when staff came by in the morning and they turned the lights on, and it was time to get up. Well, sometimes she wasn't ready. And so what she really wanted to be able to do is decide when she when she wanted to go to bed and when she wanted to wake up. And the lights, just being able to turn them on and off, was something that really signified that for her. So something that so many of us take for granted became possible for her just with some voice controlled smart plugs and just basic home automation. So that simple shift really did give her back a level of control over her daily life that had really been missing for a long time. I've got a couple more examples. I'll just share one more. I think a little bit about a gentleman that I worked with who had early onset dementia and who had some episodes of where he forgot to turn off the stove. Obviously, that posed a serious safety risk. And of course, it led the team to call for increased supervision. And so instead of rushing to add staff members, the team actually ended up implementing what we call a stove monitor with an automatic shutoff. And then that was tied to alerts that went to his support staff. So that some pretty simple device really kept him safe, but it also allowed him to maintain his independence, not only in the kitchen, but in his home. That's where he wanted to be. He wanted to age in place. He didn't want to move to an assisted living facility. So I'm hoping that in telling you these stories, it helps to highlight, some of the true power of enabling technology. It's not always about flashy devices. It's really about the right tools matched with the goals at the right time. And in all of the examples that I gave you, the technology was successful because it always centered on what the person wanted, not on what the team thought the person needed. So we know that when teams kind of take shortcuts or speak for the person, the solutions fall flat. But when we root the process in discovery and listening, in respecting a person's autonomy, enabling technology really does become a powerful catalyst for progress.
I love how you also gave examples of people all different ages and differing abilities, and it really highlights how technology, isn't for a one type of person or with a certain disability or a certain diagnosis. It really can be utilized in so many capacities. So thank you for sharing that.
You bet, you bet. So many wonderful moments in my career that I've been able to watch people just do brilliant things and live the life that they want to live. I'm always happy to share those.
Yeah, thank you, Constance. It's great to hear those stories. And that's really what it's all about, right? To hear the real life examples of how these are improving the lives of the people that we're supporting and helping to live their fullest lives. Mm-hmm. There are so many enabling technologies out there to help individuals meet their goals and live their lives to the fullest, or even enjoy the simple pleasures like enjoy chocolate pudding, like you just described in the story you just shared. But when we talk about enabling technology, there's always the question of money, right? How do we fund this? How do individuals and providers and families get their hands on the funding needed to make this possible? Are you familiar with funding options in New York State for individuals and provider agencies to avail themselves of these technological opportunities?
Yeah, and there's a lot to be excited about, honestly. New York State has taken some meaningful steps to updating its waiver to support enabling technology. And so, in a really positive light, that reflects a strong commitment to innovation, to autonomy, meaningful inclusion for people with disabilities. But even more encouraging, we think, is the inclusion of SHIFT's ETIS certification in that waiver language, recognizing that funding alone is not enough. So real progress really does require education, and the state has taken a significant step by naming that need. Now, that culture change, it doesn't happen when just a few people are trained. It happens when education is delivered broadly and consistently with purpose. And so that's where provider agencies and care coordination organizations, really do play a critical role. We really recommend that organizations come to SHIFT for system-wide education. And what makes us unique is our approach. We don't just teach how to use technology. We help teams understand why and when to use it in ways that reinforce person-centered thinking. So our trainers are subject matter experts with real-world experience in disability services, which means the learning is grounded in the day-to-day realities of staff, of organizations, and of the goals of people supported. And so in a similar light, SHIFT's Technology First Accreditation, we help organizations build systems, policies, in order to make the culture sustainable over the course of time. What I would say is that New York has opened the door. So now it's really time for providers and for case management organizations to walk through it. Hopefully with SHIFT as a partner, we would love to have that happen, really to create lasting and equitable access for enabling technology.
Thank you. It's exciting to hear that there are opportunities in the state and elsewhere, really. I mean, our association is based in New York State, and our affiliate provider agencies are in New York State, but perhaps there are listeners out here who are elsewhere in the country. And we just want to encourage folks to connect to organizations like yours, Tech for Shift, if they're interested in exploring the technological opportunities that are out there and maybe are not sure where to start and how to implement that into their operations and to avail themselves of those funding opportunities. So for an agency who may not know really where to start and hasn't really incorporated these enabling technologies into their programs yet, what should their first step be?
I have to say the first step really is adopting this sustainability mindset. So a technology first approach isn't just about making one-time purchases. It's really about building technology into a long-term strategy, just like you would staffing, transportation, or training. So we really have to start with identifying clear person-centered goals and then exploring how technology can help us achieve them. Now, all of this being said, many organizations begin with low cost or already available tools, while others, they might invest more significantly, even before securing dedicated funding, largely because they recognize that cost savings and staffing efficiencies oftentimes follow. It's important, though, for you to know that waiver funding isn't the only path. We've seen providers be successfully tap into foundations, to grants, donations, short-term loans, and even private pay models to get started. At SHIFT, we encourage organizations to go a step further, though, by actually integrating technology into your operating budgets, not as a special project line item, but as a permanent planned investment. One of the most powerful and oftentimes overlooked strategies for sustainability, though, is having that really well-trained workforce. When staff members understand the purpose of technology and then they feel empowered to use and support it, what happens is that reduces the need for outside technical support, and it helps embed technology into everyday practice. So that internal capacity is also what makes long-term success possible instead of relying on outside entities.
Training and support are absolutely crucial, particularly in this process of integrating something that maybe is new and unused to an agency. And you have a lot of staff who are supporting individuals at any given time. That element of this definitely is crucial. How do you recommend preparing staff and caregivers to use and integrate technology effectively?
It really does begin with deep discovery. So not just a checklist or a quick meeting, but really an intentional person-led process that takes time to truly understand what matters most to the person being supported. Discovery really is about more than identifying needs. It's about kind of uncovering hopes and preferences, priorities, dreams, in the person's own words and on their own terms. So one of the challenges that we're seeing in some systems is that the consideration of technology is being added as a requirement during annual planning meetings. And so while the intention behind that is good, there's real risk that it just becomes another checkbox, something that the team feels obligated to mention, rather than a meaningful exploration of how technology might support the person's goals. And so when that happens, we miss the opportunity to truly engage the person in the process. And then the technology is far less likely to be embraced or effective. Too often, very well-intentioned team members can speak for the person. Sometimes that's out of habit, sometimes it's out of desire to protect the person or expedite the process. But what we know is that when goals are shaped more by what others want than what the person values, the resulting plan feels very disconnected. The technology might look good on paper, the goal might look good on paper, but it doesn't stick because it's not anchored in the person's authentic motivation. And then I also want to mention, I need to mention the concept of dignity of risk here. So every person has the right to experience a reasonable amount of risk, to make choices, even imperfect ones, and learn from that experience. So when we only make safe or comfortable decisions on someone else's behalf, we deny them the same opportunities for growth and self-determination that we expect for ourselves. But when we encourage people to take reasonable risks that get them closer to living the life that they want to live, that's when technology truly becomes enabling. And that's when we start to see, not just progress, but really transformation.
I think for a lot of people, it's just taking that first step and knowing what direction to go in. And so for those people who aren't super tech savvy and don't know about the newest gadgets and what's out there, it can feel super overwhelming with how much new technology is out there and changing. And, what do you choose or what resources are best for the person? So what advice would you give to families or professionals or the individual themselves who are just starting to explore technology options?
My goodness, that's a big question. I would say we need to start with the goal, not the device. That's one of the most important things to address. Ask yourself, what does the person want more control over? What matters to them? Then consider how technology might support that goal, not to replace support, but to enable greater autonomy, access, or connection. So it's also important that we include the person in every step. So if technology doesn't make sense to them, it's not aligned with their goals, or wasn't something that the person had to say in, it's unlikely to make an impact. But when people feel ownership over that process and they see how a tool helps them achieve something they care about, that's when real transformation begins. The other thing that I would mention here too is it's important to remember that technology is not an all or nothing approach. You don't have to go big right off the bat. And in fact, we encourage people to start small, to choose one area of daily life where the person would like to have more independence, to try a solution that fits. And then as confidence grows, so does the willingness to explore additional options. And so when I say as confidence grows, that's on the part of the person supported, the family members, staff members. As the confidence with the entire team grows, so does the team's willingness to explore additional options and add technology over the course of time that's intended to help get the person closer to living the life that they want to live.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think there's so many different resources out there, and sometimes we overlook the simplest things. And the amount of technology that's already integrated into the devices that the person might own, just in a change of settings and things like that. So it's intriguing to know that it's not always the newest device or the most amount of money to pay for a new device, but just looking at the simple things, and what the true goals of the person are. So with any piece of change in an organization or just new implementation of devices, there's always challenges that come along with those types of things. So what are some of the biggest challenges in integrating technology for people with disabilities that you've come across?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of the challenges we see aren't actually due to the technology itself. They're rooted in myths and misconceptions. And actually, that's good news because it means that the barriers are often more about beliefs rather than insurmountable logistics. One of the most common challenges is cultural readiness. I know I've mentioned that several times already today, but if an organization doesn't fully believe in the potential of technology or doesn't yet trust the idea that people with disabilities can and should be supported to use it, we see that progress stalls. And so that hesitation is usually based on outdated assumptions rather than actual limitations. But another concern we hear frequently is a fear around job loss or diminished human connection. Some staff and family members, people supported, worry that introducing technology means replacing people, automating relationships, or kind of weakening that trust. So we certainly understand those concerns. They come from a place of caring. But the reality is that enabling technology isn't about replacing human support. It's about using the tools to increase independence and self-direction. And when we do that well, it actually enhances relationships because staff can shift away from kind of this repetitive task-based support and spend more time on meaningful engagement. I would say another challenge is, around that stakeholder buy-in. I kind of alluded to that. Everyone, people supported, families, direct support staff, leadership, case managers, they all need to be part of this journey. And that really does start with creating a shared understanding of what enabling technology is and what it's not, and then how it can be used to align with every person's goals. Of course, we also see challenges when organizations focus too much on the device and not enough on the outcome. So buying technology without a clear purpose or without involving the person leads to frustration, clutter, underuse, abandonment. The goal always has to come first. I know I said that earlier today, but the goal always has to come first. Technology is just one of the ways we help someone get there. And then, as we mentioned a little bit ago, funding alignment can be a barrier, especially in systems that still treat technology as a special program rather than an essential part of service delivery. But even that is changing. More states are building pathways for funding. And, SHIFT does help team navigate and kind of plan for long-term sustainability there. But those are some of the biggest challenges that we run across.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think people get so caught up sometimes on what the challenges could be that they're afraid to take that first step. So that helps to ease my mind, and I'm sure others as well.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about the ways in which these technologies can also help get to some of the staffing burdens that exist. Pretty much every agency out there right now has a problem with hiring staff. It's a real challenge, and retaining staff, and have to really be creative in the ways that they're using their staff effectively throughout the day and night. And It's interesting to hear you talk about how some of these technologies can actually allow for staff to be moving their attention towards tasks that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get to, because they would have to support individuals in a way that they really can be independent in functioning with the help of this enabling technology. So that's something
Yes.
that we look forward to learning more about in the future.
Yes, absolutely. And we know that most provider organizations are facing a 40 to 60% vacancy rate among their DSPs across the country. So it's not about replacing people. This is really about trying to maximize the limited resources that we have. Our direct support staff are so critical, and we really are looking for ways to do something a little bit different to allow our direct support staff to do things that are incredibly meaningful and focus less on just kind of doing the mundane tasks. Technology can step in and help there. There are just some things, though, that only a human being can do. Only a human being can or should do. And that's where we need to direct the time and attention of our direct support staff.
Thank you. What's one thing you wish everyone understood about the power of technology in the lives of individuals with IDD?
Yeah, I think what I really want people to hear is that the technology is not the goal. Technology is not the goal, it's just the tool. We don't pursue technology just for the sake of innovation. We pursue it because it helps people live more freely, more confidently, more on their own terms. There's this quote that I come back to often, and I can't attribute it. I don't. I'm not sure who said it, but it goes like this: We want autonomy for ourselves, but safety for those that we love. Many of the things that we want for those that we care about are things that we would adamantly oppose for ourselves because they would infringe upon our sense of self. And I think too often, in the name of safety, we unintentionally limit people's autonomy. Enabling technology helps us strike a balance. It allows us to support people without taking away the right to direct their own lives.
Thank you, Constance. That's a great quote. I think that will resonate and connect with all of our listeners out there. So thank you very much for joining us today and sharing all of these wonderful insights. We're excited to announce that Tech First Shift, along with Simply Home, will be joining us to present a session on this topic at the CP State Annual Conference, Powering Progress, on October 8th and 9th in Saratoga Springs, New York. So this conversation really is a snapshot of what that session will delve into. And I know at that time, we're really going to be doing a deep dive into the ways in which these technologies not only support the individuals we support, but also how they can ease the staffing burdens that many of our agencies out there are plagued with. So we're very much looking forward to that and learning more and connecting in person in October. But in the meantime, if agencies want to learn more, or individuals and their families want to learn more, how can they connect to you?
They can just visit our website. We would love to see you at techfirstshift.com. Of course, if you're at the conference, we would love to connect with you there. We're very excited about being there.
Us too. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's a wrap on this episode of CP Stated. Many thanks to Constance Harrington from Tech First Shift for sharing how enabling technology is reshaping the way we support independence, inclusion, and innovation in the disability field. To learn more, visit techfirstshift.com and explore how your organization can take the next step toward a technology-first future. Be sure to join us next time when we welcome Dr. Maria Kansas Devine, Chief Medical Officer at the Center for Disability Services. We'll talk about her whole person approach to care, the clinical realities of supporting people with developmental disabilities, and what it means to truly listen and observe in the work we do. Until next time, stay connected, stay committed, and stay CP Stated.